Hello and welcome to my live stream edition of the John Keim Report. Appreciate you tuning in. Don't forget, you can always find us on anywhere you get your podcasts, Apple, Spotify, all these good points. If you want to follow us on YouTube, go to Empire Media. That's AMPIRE. Always much appreciated when you tune in. And of course, you can read my work on ESPN.com. Have a story up now about Sam Howell's first game, where it looked good, where it needed to improve. So, as you can see, I am joined tonight by the voice of the Washington Commanders, Bram Weinstein, my good pal. So, what I want to do, Bram, is just talk for a few minutes, then answer a few questions about the first game and where you think things are headed. And I've had a chance to talk a lot to this group about what my thoughts were. And in fact, earlier today, put up a little bit of a film review about the sacks, about Sam Howell's day, then after the game. So, I am curious, Bram, from your perspective, what were some of your big takeaways from the opener?
Boy, where do you want to start?
Let's start with the offensive line, because that's a big one. And one of the things, and just so I know you put it up this morning, but my take was, first of all, the line has to get better. We know that. And I think it has to get better in multiple facets. Not all the 6 sacks were on them. And I think there were some areas where people thought that certain players were just horrible. And the film did not support that narrative. So I am curious what you thought about the line.
We say this every year, and I feel this way about this particular game. It's not as bad as I thought it was when I left the stadium. Oftentimes, when they have a big win, it's not as good as you think it is. So rewatching last night was really eye-opening for me. And I want to start by saying this, because I think a lot of this conversation needs to be couched on, let's be honest about the team that they played here.
Right.
That's not a great roster. So on both sides of the ball, when we talk about it, I mean, I want to be diplomatic about it, because I don't want to rip another team, but like that is, I mean, I think most people would agree with me that is a bottom tier roster that's out in the NFL this year. So with that in mind, I actually thought the offensive line played better than it probably seemed. The person who stood out,
a fair way to put it. Yeah.
Yes. When you hear 3 turnovers, 6 sacks, like it sounds 238 yards, it sounds really bad. Yes, Ryan, I still am in my secret bunker. We're still in the midst of, for those of you watching, sorry, but my house is under construction. So I've been sequestered to this little hole. Hopefully in the next couple of weeks, I'll be back in like a normal area again, and not being held against my will. All right. I thought Sam Cosmi was outstanding. So from a first impression of his move to right guard, he got off blocks, got to the second level, was extremely aggressive. I thought he did a very, very good job. Nick Gates is everything I thought he'd be, very aggressive. I did think there was some miscommunication in the center of the line with him, but overall, I thought he was very good. Sadiq Charles, I thought, was very aggressive, very good, with the exception of one particular drive where there was one play where I thought he hurt his knee because he had got kind of bent over. It doesn't sound like that happened, but it didn't look good. So there was a couple plays there. I thought Charles Leno was fine. I really did. And Andrew Wiley had a few moments for sure. And the part that really stands out to me, there's 2 things about it that stands out to me. And there's a secondary part to this second part, and then I'll shut up and let you talk. When the Cardinals put 6 up on the line and feigned like they were going to bring heat, and they didn't do it very often, but when they did, there was confusion on the offensive line as to who was where. So the double whammy of the sack, fumble, touchdown was a miscommunication of who had Dennis Gardeck, who, by the way, is a very underrated, very good pass rusher, like Hassan Reddick style. Maybe not as consistent, but very, very good pass rusher. He's one of, if not the only outside of Budda Baker, dangerous player on that defense. And he made a huge play in that moment, but it was because of a miscommunication and a miss. So he gets through. Hal had to get rid of the ball. Double whammy on that play. Hal had to make up for the mistake. There was a mistake on the line. So double whammy, it happens. But outside, and this is why I can't believe Arizona didn't do more of it. A couple of their sacks came on this. Like, they caught them off guard and there were miscommunications. They didn't do enough of it, in my opinion. I think if they rewatch how they played defense, the fact that they had them confused in these looks where you don't know how many people they're bringing and still confuse them by only bringing 4, I think they're going to look back on this and think that they didn't do enough up front to try to confuse this offensive line. On the good side, I thought they ran the ball better than it looks. And the thing that's noticeable, is because it was not happening last year because we didn't have the players to do it, was the movement and the pulling of the interior line, specifically Cosmi and Gates or Sadiq and Gates, or at times Wiley too, the athleticism was obviously there. So I actually saw some pretty good creases for the run game. Now, they didn't exploit many of them. And then lastly on that, this is where I was surprised by how they handled, not only did they run the ball 3 times in a row when they got the ball to 22 and really could have put them away at the end of the game, but style of run, which was just line up power, dive across the middle, and not use the type of formations and run fits that seemed to be working earlier in the game. So not only was it not aggressive at the end of the game, it was not aggressive without using the plays that were working in their run game. So that's my overall take, like on the offensive line.
Yeah, and I think what we saw from the line, and it's funny because sometimes things get, if you say a guy wasn't, like Wiley there were 2 plays. He had the sack fumble, that was his. Then he had a holding penalty that was obviously his. Otherwise, in protection, he was fine, right? Because you didn't see the issues coming from there. Like there was one time there was a slide protection that was missed. That was Gates had to slide over.
Yeah.
I thought there was some inconsistencies in the run game. I thought Sadiq at times was a little bit inconsistent there. But some of the stuff, this is where you don't know. And this is where I'll say, okay, let's see, because he is, even though he's experienced, he's not necessarily an experienced starter enough. Let's see how he is when he has a few games under. But the question I would ask too is, while it wasn't as bad as I think people thought maybe it was, and again, like I would say for anybody who feels like that, like the reason I'm saying this and the reason Bram is saying this, yeah, I'm like, somebody asked me, Rush Manuel, our guy on Twitter was asked, he couldn't join tonight, but he asked me, like, what do you do when you rewatch the game? So when I rewatch, and just so people know where it's coming from, and first of all, like I also talk to people who are much smarter than me about what they saw as well, just to see, am I seeing it right? But what I'll do, Bram, is my little thing is I'm going to watch every play, especially if there's like the sacks or just even the pass plays. It's probably about 8 to 10 times per play that you're watching. You're slowing it down and you get it from multiple angles, from the end zone, from the sideline. And then so I can see what was this person doing on this play. And if I don't see what they're doing, then I go back and watch again. So, and there's some plays where you're like, okay, you see right away, this is what happened. And then you go. But some of those you want to see, like, why did this person react this way? So you're going to spend several hours. Like I'll get up Monday morning. It's by 6 a.m. I'm in my office, sometimes by 5:30, watching the stuff again and then going over it and over it and over it. So just so people understand the process, it's not just after a game sitting down and saying, boy, that looked horrible, so I think it was horrible. It's like, boy, that didn't look great. Let's see how it looked on film.
Yes.
That's what it is. So you try to strip away the passion side of me. And like, trust me, folks, I'm an Ohio State guy. You see the hat. There are a lot of times after a game that I'm thinking exactly like how you guys are thinking now. That's how I think about how some of the Ohio State games I see. And then you watching it, it wasn't quite as bad as I thought. Anyways, that's just for people to understand the process that we put into it. And for you, Bram, I mean, I assume it's the same thing.
Yeah, I watch it on the all 22 because that's
right.
the best way for me to rewatch it.
Right.
And they give you multiple angles, for the all 22, and then I'll watch specific plays 4, 5, 6, 7 times, to see what happened, because you can't catch every position. So it takes a while to go over it, but it's worth it in the end, in my opinion. It's worth it.
Very much.
To do this job and to do it, to the best of my ability. I'm like you. I form my opinions and then go ask questions about whether my opinions are valid or not. But I describe it as I've learned through osmosis through the years, that having talked to coaches through the years, having watched film, and I feel like I know enough. And most of the time, I'm on the right path. But oftentimes they'll tell me where we're a little bit off. But overall, I mean, that's where I landed on the offensive line. The metrics don't look good. The numbers don't look particularly good. And I'll give you another one that I really didn't like. They didn't have a single run over 10 yards. The longest run.
That's something I want to ask.
So that's something that clearly has to change. And it goes back to, there were creases and holes that were created by them, but we didn't have a running back that was able to plow through and make a bigger play than he did.
I saw some blocks missed at the second level too, or not sustained as well. Right. And so there, in some cases, and this is where a guy like Charles versus Chris Paul is a little bit stronger at the point of attack, but Charles moves better. And so that, you wish you could kind of combine the two, but you can't. But anyways, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Yeah. No. And listen, I mean, I had heard before the game that Antonio Gibson was going to get more reps than he did. I think the fumble, and I don't know this for sure, I'd have to ask the coaches about it, but I do think the fumble probably changed their mind about that. So, I'll have to ask them about this, but I had gotten the word that he was going to, because of matchups that they like, that he was going to get more time on the field. And the fact that he ended up only getting 3 carries and 1 catch on 1 target probably has a little bit to do with ball security. And, that's, educated guess on that one. Having been told what to expect before we walked into the game, that you'd see more of a shared load between him and Gibson, and then it didn't end up that way. The only thing I can really attribute it to was a fumble.
Right. And I think, it's funny because you talk about the long runs, and I'm watching some other games around the league, and you see like, oh, do they have that kind of a back? And I like Brian Robinson, and I think he can be a good solid back. He's not a dynamic runner. He's a powerful runner between the tackles. But what I also wonder too is, do you have, if you don't have that dynamic runner, you better have guys that can open things up at the second level to help create that third level situation where you can make a guy miss, and now you turn a 10-yard run into 20 yards. That's what I wonder about with this line is, are they able to do that? And it's not just line. There are some blocks, like there are a couple of blocks where I took a video of one play, and I may post it on Instagram tomorrow, where it's the inside the red zone, where like Bates just buries some guys, and like the left side, the right side, just Cosme. I think Sadiq basically bear hugged a guy on this, and but it was just like a good, powerful run in the red zone, and those are things that so Bates getting involved, because when I talk about protection, Bram, too, it's protection. And then when you talk to coaches, when they talk about protection, which is why I take this approach, it's not just the O-line, it's the tight ends. It's the quarterback diagnosing things at the proper pace, right? And it's also receivers have to win their routes at the on time. And so, because it all works together. If you're not winning on time, the guy can't get rid of the ball. Now he's got to hold it, and now you have problems if it breaks down. And so, but I also wonder, Bram, too, when you go forward, like the line wasn't as bad as we thought Sunday, but was it good enough to get this team like against some better defenses coming up? That is really the question, and that's something I don't know yet.
Yeah, I think this weekend's going to be very telling. It's the better defense that they're facing this weekend with Denver, and it's on the road. So this will be very telling what happens this week. I see a number of people saying they need time to gel. I agree with this.
I agree with that.
Really
absolutely.
It's really a new line, and when we get to Sam, I got to tell you, I'll just tell you up front, I actually thought he played a lot better than I thought he did. He was actually everything I kind of expected from him, albeit with a few massive mistakes that occurred. And there's the growing pains that come with this. But with the offensive line, largely, I came out of it thinking they didn't play very well, because you see 6 sacks and you see things like that, and you're like, that's bad. And then I rewatched and I go, I don't think they actually played that poorly. And I will say this largely too, because the defense, it goes without saying, the defense was dominant, right, against them. They were actually dominant on the offensive side of the ball too. It was their own mistakes that got in their own way. Really, honestly, the numbers to me after rewatching don't really reflect how effective they actually were. They got in their own way with bad penalties, miscommunications on the line, and in a couple of cases, a couple of bad breaks. Like they had a Logan Thomas play down the sideline taken back on a terrible call. So there were a couple of things that kind of, did not go their way that were a little bit unfortunate.
Right. And I'm with you on Howell. And I talked about this earlier today, so I don't want to waste time, just kind of saying the same thing, but I did think he was better. Like there's a lot of things that I still like with him. And I love the competitiveness. And I even said on my earlier today, but also on the radio, that I felt like it was almost a little bit of a Heineke-esque type game where you find a way to win. Now he's more talented than Taylor, but I think he brings some of that same mentality, which is, he's very competitive, and he doesn't let the bad series or plays get to him. And I love that. And I think that's something you can absolutely build off of. And you have to remember, it's his second start, somebody
John, he had a handful of bad throws the whole game.
Yeah,
now right. We could parse out whether he made the right decisions on certain things.
Right.
But he had 2 plays early. I think it was after one of the early sacks. He had 2 that he forced, 2 in a row that he forced that were bad. He sailed one on Jahan that was bad footwork, frankly. And then There was one play where he had a wide receiver screen set up, and I don't know why he didn't throw it. He just didn't throw it, and he took off and ran. And so I'd have to ask him, why did you do that in that particular case? And then he forced one to Logan that was late. But then think about the other throws. He had a couple of drops, like flat drops by Logan.
That ball that Curtis Samuel was beautiful at the end of the first half.
He threw
that was
like
freaking great.
That to me, like outside of the sweat plays and the defensive play, the sweat plays really turned the game, obviously. The play of the game offensively was he just got a sack fumble that gave Arizona the lead with 55 seconds to go in the game, turns around and throws 2 dots and then an incredible pass to Curtis Samuel. And frankly, might have had a touchdown had he shot for Jahan behind him. So like he had 2 open receivers on that, but he threw a perfect pass to Samuel, set up a field goal at the end of the half. This guy has done this over and over. He's the most accurate passer we've had since Kirk Cousins here. It translated into week 1. I know the numbers don't say it, but I'm telling you, if you rewatch this, you'll see it. It was right there. If you take away the flat drops that occurred to him, he's got a 66% of completions out there. And then it's this, he doesn't stack up the bad plays. He comes back. He has what is a disaster play at the end of a half, has barely any time left in a timeout, and he throws a dot to Samuel that sets up a field goal. That's winning football. I mean, I know nobody likes what the score was. I thought they should have won by more. In rewatching, you felt like the better team it wasn't even close who the better team actually was, and the score's not indicative of who the better team was. However, they won, and I keep trying to remind myself here, not everything was great about this. There's a lot to clean up here. There were some massive mistakes, but the Rams went to Seattle and killed them. The Giants, that was an abominable performance by them. The Bengals had a terrible performance in week 1. This could have happened to them too. Don't get it twisted. This could have happened to them too. And it was very close to happening, and they found a way to win anyway.
No, absolutely. And by the way, on the one play you're talking about, the screen, so that was an RPO. And this is something else I talked about, but I know that on that one, he hesitated to Terry, and they said, if you see it, go. But what was happening is the outside linebacker, he's reading that, and he sees him start to hedge his way to the outside. And that's why he tucked and run. But they said, just throw, because Terry would have gotten 4 yards on that anyways. But you look at that, that's an RPO handoff is what he should have done. And so so the learning curve, but the whole learning curve, everything's a lesson still for him. So in that situation, it's okay, you made the decision to throw, then throw it. Let him get to 3 or 4 yards, but it's better than 0, which is what he got, which counted as a sack. So anyway, so let me ask you this too, because we've talked a lot about him, but defensively, and I know that Arizona's offense is not very good, but that defensive line was tremendous. And it wasn't just the one thing that really jumped out to me was it wasn't just Daron Payne or Montez Sweat. John Allen made a lot of noise. But it was also, I thought James Smith-Williams played really well. I thought Casey Toohill did a nice job. Abdullah Anderson made a couple plays. So it was a lot of guys contributed up there, but there were a couple plays where Montez Sweat is dude is just really athletic. And so he gets 1.5 sacks. So what do we always talk about? Him finishing. And the thing that, within that game, it's always hand in hand coverage into that. Well, his sacks did not come fast. I think one of them was 3-point-something seconds. The other one was around 4.5 seconds. Yeah. But they covered well enough to give him time to get around the corner. And one time was a fumble. So, I thought the line was tremendous.
John Allen and Daron Payne. Payne, first of all, came back what looks to be in better shape and faster than he did a year ago. And there's one play you want to go watch something crazy. He gets double teamed on a play. They throw a screen pass. He breaks off of it and makes a tackle 10 yards downfield. Yeah. He's John Allen. It's cartoonish at times what he does to offensive linemen. When he times the snap right, he's got this move where he cuts through the center and the guard, and it's impossible to stop. And within half a second, he's in the quarterback's face. There was another one. I don't know if you saw this one. There's another one where the guard somehow got turned around where he was facing his own quarterback and Allen was pushing him towards him. I mean, there's these cartoonish moments with these two. They are in an unbelievably great tandem. And Sweat, to your point, they've been saying this. Listen, he don't even need to say it out loud. They told Deron Payne, have a big year, have big numbers, we'll pay you. They did. They told John Allen to do the same thing. They did. They've told McLaurin to do the same. Dick McLaurin might be a little different because, of what his meaning is to the organization. I don't think they told him you have to have 1,500 yards receiving, but they want to see production. Would you look with Montez Sweat? He's basically saying, do what those other two guys did, we'll pay you. Now, we don't know if the new owners follow through with that promise the way Rivera followed through with the previous promises, but the record is there for him to look back on and his agent to look back on that they do pay their own when they do perform. And this was a hell of a start for him. And the other one, too, and I'm sure we'll get to it, Cam Curl was a Pro Bowler 2 days ago. Cam was
great.
He was ridiculously anticipatory of plays. He was in people's faces. It was he knew where the ball. I don't think Arizona knew where the ball was going because they have a quarterback who's been there for 2 weeks. Cam's standing where the receivers were expected to be on 7 to 8 different occasions. I mean, he is at times the linchpin of their defense, and he was absolutely outstanding.
He had the play inside in the red zone where he almost picked it off, but it's just he got his heels on the goal line and he drove on the ball. It was just really good play. And then there were a couple other times where, because they're using him in the box a lot, is that hybrid in the Buffalo nickel role, where what I love about him is he's not a huge guy, no problem sticking his nose in there. And he got in there a couple of times where he's able to avoid blocks, but he is really aggressive getting to where he needs to be. And I think he is such an asset to that defense. And the one thing I'd like to see him add to his game is exactly what he almost did the other day, which is pick off a couple passes, because that will get him more recognition and it'll get him paid more. So which is the one missing part to his resume, but he is really, really good. And I've always appreciated how much he plays his spot.
I think I even said it on the air ago for week one for two guys in contract years. That was a hell of a first impression that they went to make. I mean, they looked like players and here's the way that they played. And the other thing that really stood out to me on defense for sure is, we saw this throughout the spring and into the summer, which got me very excited about the defense. The speed on the back end is there. You want to see something else that was laughable. Like when you rewatch, you'll see the John Allen play, which is amazing. As a guy literally facing his quarterback, he's handed backwards. He's pushing him backwards. I don't even know how it happened. There is a play, like you remember Percy Butler nearly had an interception. They could have had 3 interceptions, this team. Forbes could have had one late. Curl could have had one. Percy could have had one. Right. So they could have had 5 turnovers easily in this game.
But they didn't.
The Percy Butler one, go rewatch this. As the ball is being snapped, Percy Butler is looking the other direction at his teammate, asking him a question. Probably, whose man do I have?
Yeah, it was up at the line, right? On the right side.
He's on the line of scrimmage. When the ball is snapped, he's looking at his teammate, asking him a question about something. The ball is snapped, and he recovers and nearly picks off a ball 7 yards behind him.
Yeah, no, that was because there was like a little stack formation to the left of the offense right there. Yep.
That's speed. They have a level of speed on the back end that they have not had for a very long time. And again, I want to be diplomatic about this. That is not a good offense that they face. That is not a very good offensive line. There's very few receivers there that scare you. The quarterback's been there for 2 weeks and is a career backup. Like, I want to be fair about this. They didn't dominate the Chiefs, the other day, but they did what they're supposed to do against a team that should be overmatched against them. And they easily could have had a ton of turnovers. They limited them. And I think I counted, I don't know, maybe 7 plays that were true positive plays by this team that were not just short dump off 3-yard, whatever. Like, they had a couple nice rushes on the edge. They had a nice play early in the second half to Rondale Moore where there was a really bad hold that was missed on Jamin Davis. I don't know whether that would have been called back or, I don't know whether he would have gotten there or not and changed the outcome, but there was a hold, a bad one that was missed on Davis on that play. There were very, very, very few what I would describe as positive and anything close to a chunk play against them. I mean, you can't ask for much more than that. And then when you need them to make a play because the offense is struggling, they do. So this is winning football. I know it was ugly. It wasn't exactly what I expected either. I thought they would blow this team out, frankly. And if you rewatch, you see the earmarks of they should have. They just didn't.
They didn't. And I think that's the question is, can they get there and when? And I think that's what it'll be. That's why I think this game will be very interesting Sunday at Denver, because it's not, Broncos have the Broncos run D 61 yards. I think they allowed against the Raiders. So, and somebody up here, and I wanted to kind of get to this because I think it's important. and let me see if I can find the question about the run game. And now I can't find it. By the way, a lot of people asking about Jacoby Brissett and the Jets. Why the hell would this team trade Jacoby Brissett?
So let me pose something to you here on this. Okay. This team's in on Howell, right? They are. And what's Jacoby Brissett's long-term future here? I don't know. Do the Jets really have any real interest in him? I don't know that either. Okay. And I don't know what they would actually offer to do so. And secondarily, I want to say this. Today, Charles Leno restructured a contract to free up some cap room. Do we know why yet? Are they intending to try to do some business now? I don't know. I don't know. So he makes a pretty good chunk of money that could be off of their books. Now, to your point, it is a massive risk to actually trade him, because if Howell were to turn an ankle, you're going to Jake Fromm. That's what's happening. And I love him. But
it makes no sense.
Well, okay. So, but from that other perspective of, if you're trying to free up cap room to do some business now, for whatever reason, here's an opportunity. Do you want to get an asset for a player who's probably or may not be here? He's not going to be at that price next year. Maybe you might think about it. And so I see a pathway to doing it with the understanding, and I mean a clear understanding with the ownership. If you did something like this, the risk that you're taking by doing it.
Let me say this. The only way I'm doing it is if the ownership says you are coming back next year. Because if something happens to Howell, you're done. So,
correct. It has to be a clear understanding with the owner. Yeah, we are taking a massive calculated risk by doing something like this. You've got to be on board with us if we are willing to do it.
Yeah.
I don't think for that reason, I don't think it's going to happen either. But we know who their starting quarterback is, and that's not changing. It's
not changing, but there's a ton of value in Jacoby Brissett.
I agree.
And so so Colin Fletcher wants to know, what's the deal with Cam Curl's contract? Are they going to extend him? Do they have the money now, or will it happen at the end of the season? So a lot of that is still working through ownership stuff. You have to know one thing about the Harris Group. They are very, very patient. They're not going to come out and just say, yeah, go ahead and do it. I think you need to go to them. And this is what they do, is they are very big on being, making presentations to them. When I've talked to people who have worked for them in Philly and New Jersey, and then people who deal with them here, they're very big on the presentation aspect. So I only say that because a lot goes into this. It's not as simple as, hey, we want to do this. Oh, okay, go ahead. There's a lot that they have going on, and it's there's still a long season. Now, if you're on the other side, you want it done because you don't want to take the chance of, you want to get that extension done before, in case we saw, listen, Aaron Rodgers, tears his Achilles out for the season. That happens all the time. So you want that security before you start playing. That's the ideal. But it's been a very slow process. I'll say that. And unless something's happened in the last week to get it started, I don't think we're very far along in that. But I think the sides know what about where you need to get to. So, but I don't think there's a whole lot, unless something has changed in the last week and that I haven't heard, which is always possible.
Yeah. I don't think a deal there. Well, one, the Jets have to want him. Two, they'd have to give up
I was talking about Cam's contract, but
Cam's contract. I don't expect anything like that to happen right now. Although, I could see where here's the weird part with him. So, and I hate talking about this stuff because they're 1-0, and I want to give Rivera and his staff a chance to retain their jobs. If there's going to be a change at the end of the season, how does a new GM view Cam Curl? Would they see him the same way if there's going to be changeover in staff? I think we all know that if Rivera and Jack Del Rio and everybody are coming back, beyond this year, Cam Curl needs to be re-signed. I mean, he might as well be the captain of the defense, quarterback of the defense. Of course he does. But I think that's why I think probably let's wait this thing out. And probably the ownership wants to wait this thing out. So let's see how it goes. To everybody who thinks it's a done deal that they're going to make a change at the end of the year, I don't think so. I think we need to play this thing out and see what happens here. If they are right about Sam Howell, and if they have a good record and end up in the playoffs, then I think everything's on the table for the staff to completely return. And if that's going to be the case, then I think a priority will be to re-sign either Chase or Montez, if not both, and then obviously Cam Curl. There's a lot of other free agents I'll have to talk about. But if they're not going to do that, and we're just a long way away from it, I don't know how a new regime would view him, honestly. So
Right.
so that's the other part of this.
Yeah, and I think it just takes a little bit to get to that point. So, I don't know, I know they've mentioned how they'd like to extend, especially Montez. I mean, they know the value in Montez. I think Chase, I think that's a definite wait and see. I think if they could get Montez done now, they would. With Chase, it's always going to be a wait and see. Komodo King wants to know how come the run game wasn't ever able to take off. And so, Bram, my little 2 cents on that. First of all, in the first half, I felt like they needed to run Brian Robinson a little bit more. It only had 3 carries, I think it was in the first half, something like that.
They were throwing past the run a little more early than I expected.
Very much, and which is okay. But to me, what they were doing well was they were getting some light boxes and getting him going on 5-6 yard runs, just kind of staying ahead of the chains, which I think is important for a young quarterback. I also felt like in the second half, they went to a little bit more. And there were times where, like I said, I just felt like this block was missed. That block was missed at the second level, right? And so I think it prevented a couple times some things from being much better. And then in the end, the last couple of drives, they were, like you mentioned earlier, they went very conservative with the runs. And you're watching the Cardinals get 9 guys in the box and then basically just attacking the line of scrimmage because they know what's coming. So, I thought like they had some good or some fine runs, but you're right. Like they never had those explosive runs, and that's what they're going to have.
A single one over 10 yards.
No.
I mean, like that's rare. On the other side of this, and this was the really good stat because we haven't seen a lot of this one. They had 5 receivers with 10 plus yards per catch.
Right.
We haven't had that in a while. 5 receivers with 10 plus yards per catch. So they're able to stretch the field in the intermediate zone. We didn't see any real deep shots being taken. So except the one to Terry that ended up in a PI and led towards the first touchdown. Hal did the thing he's been doing in camp that I love about him, frankly, because I don't think most guys do not move to their left as well as he does.
No,
he did. He escaped the pocket, moved to his left, threw back between 4 people and threw a touchdown pass. I mean, these are the little things about him that I think has all of us really excited about him. As far as the run game goes, I think it's a mixture of things. One, I love Brian Robinson. I think he's a very good player. I don't think he's a home run hitter. He's not Breece Hall. He's not going to, they don't have that type of running back. I think Gibson, once upon a time, was figured to potentially be that way, but I don't see the skill set and timing of, say, you take Gibson's speed and balance and put it into Robinson's know-how, and you have the running back that I think we're talking about here. I love Robinson. I think I heard Chris Cooley say this once. He's a singles and doubles hitter. There's nothing wrong with that. Because he's consistent. You're not going to get negative yardage with him. When you need tough yards, you get it. He's a very reliable player. So I like him a lot. But I don't think we have an explosive running. We didn't draft our Jahmyr Gibbs. We don't have
and I'll tell you what.
Player. Yeah.
And this team liked Jahmyr Gibbs. And I think they were surprised and disappointed
how early he went.
Yeah. Oh my God. Yes. Yeah. I think they definitely had their eye on him. Now, I don't know that they would have taken him when they did, but I think that he was certainly, and why, because he would have been a perfect style in this offense. And one of the things with the run game, Bieniemy comes from a system where they like to throw the ball. Andy Reid was always known for passing the ball in Philly and in Kansas City. And he's continued that. So that's where he's coming from. So that style of offense really is designed to have maybe a different style of back than what they still would need. Because I think there's a ton of value. I like Brian Robinson. And I'm with you.
Yeah, I like him a lot. Yes.
Right. And that's where I think there's sometimes they need those blocks to be hit to give them a crease. Yeah. And if, and sometimes as a running back, when Alfred Morris was here, Alfred Morris was not a fast guy. It's by running back standards, but he was so good at setting up blocks. Yeah. So good. Now, some of that had to do with the zone read, but some of that had to do with his patience. And then boom, he would get those guys over, draw the linebacker here, and then cut back. Yep. And that's where I think those RPOs, because that's just, again, it's one thing to run it in college. It's another thing to run it in the NFL. And just because you run it, you still have to make the right decision, getting comfortable with it. Because there are times where okay, if you hand it off here, you're getting 6-7 more yards. And the more you get of those, maybe the more you have a better chance for another gain.
I'm hoping a little bit with Robinson too. The more time he gets, the more reps he gets, because he seems to thrive in contact, which is, it's a good thing. Like it's never negative yardages. He's never going backwards. It's always falling forward. It's all of these things. And so like, I like that about him. And he like clearly like watch the cuts he makes. Like he's a very polished running back. The next level for him to me is what you're talking about. Like, can he like not lean into the contact as much when there's an opportunity to either set up a block or make one more secondary cut? Because if he gets to that point where it's not all about just the contact, because he's confidently will finish runs the right way. But if he could kind of, I would just say mature into becoming the NFL running back where the second cut becomes finding some more open space, I think you'll see more of the 10 to 15 yard variety runs. He doesn't have the breakaway speed that I think allows him to have those home run hitting runs that we're kind of looking for. Yeah.
And that's where I think, and this is where, if the line can help just a little bit more in the run game, or the tight ends or whomever, the receiver sometimes, getting to that second level, because there are a couple of times where it's like, if you just get there, whatever. So Juan Quiros wants to know, will we see Jabril Cox promoted to the roster and playing anytime soon? I don't see it. Listen, Dallas was okay seeing him go. So I would say that I don't
know, but I will say off the game, and I came out of camp, I was trying to be less concerned about the linebackers because of the talent around them in the secondary and the defensive line. At the end of camp, I started to be worried again, and I'm less concerned about Jamin. Yeah,
I'm not concerned about Jamin.
I thought Cody Barton had a rough one of people.
This isn't like what I'm saying is that, first of all, there's two things about Cox. One, I know they liked him a lot coming out of college, and I liked him too, but I don't think you're going to see him anytime soon necessarily, because first of all, you got to get used to the defense. And it takes these guys a minute, especially at that position. But they signed Barton for a reason. I will say, I liked what I thought Jamin Davis did a nice job, especially early on. There were a couple plays, but I think Barton gets washed up a little bit in that traffic. And is that
over and over, John?
Yeah, right. And so is that a function of getting used to this defense, or is it just like this is who he is? I don't. We'll find out.
Yeah,
but
I agree. Have to ask the coaches about it, but like
right.
Of the people, like Gibson had the fumble, and then I don't know why his workload went down from there. I'll have to ask the coaches why.
That's an educated guess. After that.
On Barton, I thought he was the player that didn't play very well.
Right? I agree with that. He just there wasn't anything where you say, "Oh, okay, I see that," and that So yeah, I would agree with that. But I don't know that you can see a guy like Jabril Cox coming up anytime soon. I just don't know where he's at with anything to really think that he's ready for that. So So anyway, other people want to know, and I can't remember who had it up here, but they want to know, okay, do you think we're getting the whole story on Chase Young? So here's what I know. First of all, and I've been asked, a lot of people have said this to me, and Bram, I'm sure to you too, like, oh, I'm tired of his injury drama. This is far different than last year. Last year we started hearing really early, too early, as it turned out, that, hey, maybe he might be coming back soon. And there was some level of optimism, even after about 4 or 5 weeks, that, hey, maybe it's soon. And that's what all the fans, we would say stuff, the fans would hear that. And so it just builds and builds and builds. And then you knew that eventually he was cleared. And then we had to wait, because he had to then he had to have the confidence in the knee, which I understand. It was a brutal injury, ACL and ruptured patellar tendon. This is different. This is a neck injury. He was not cleared for game contact. It was more like it was what they called it, controlled contact. In other words, practice level contact. When you're cleared for uncontrolled contact uncontrolled contact, that's a game level situation. So they wanted to see him ease into that. And it was like, because I know Rivera said on Friday, if he's cleared, he might play. And that was accurate. But there are levels to that clearing. I think they could have done a better job saying, listen, there are different scenarios involved here. It's not as simple as cleared then play. it's clear to what level. And I think that's something that,
there were some gamesmanship there too. I was all right with it because I mean the Cardinals spent the week not saying who their starting quarterback is. So
there's some
why are we going to
gamesmanship,
tell them
but
whether our stud edge rusher is going to play or not? Like, what's the point? So I wasn't really bothered by that. at
no,
all.
and I think, like, so is there more? It's a neck injury. That's
Yeah.
what it is. And so you're going to be careful. He wasn't cleared.
Yeah.
I know in this case he wants to play, and I don't think this is like what I know from his standpoint. Like, I think he'd just rather wait until after he plays before he talks to us again, because there's not much to say. I mean, and I think it's frustrating. I get it.
I want to just one thing about this, like over the weekend, because of how vague the information was, and they're not sharing what it is. Like, it's hard to know exactly what's going on. But I mean, it took till the end of the week to even be cleared for any contact. So I want to tell you that, like, this is not something that's minor. All right. So they're like, they're taking their time. They want him to be healthy. Like, I saw the reaction from some of the fans on social media, and I know it's just some of the fans, and they were just, it was not right. Like, the guy has a neck injury. Give him the benefit of the doubt, right? Give the team the benefit of the doubt. He wants to play. He needs to play. This is a career year for him. The team is trying to be careful with him, and they don't want him to get hurt seriously again. Like, slow down your judgments. And the way that they were phrased really bothered me. Like, he's hurt. Like, let him heal. When he's ready to go, he will play. So I want to, like, it's not the knee injury. It's a different injury. I'm frustrated. We're all frustrated by it. We want to see him play. I want to see him play healthy. That's all.
Right. And and I think, exactly. So Jim says Forbes' break on the ball he almost intercepted was just as impressive as Butler's near interception. I agree. That's something he does very well. Yeah. And the other thing, like, the thing I always like about him is, and you saw this again, is how quick he gets to the ball when he knows where he's going, and how quickly he can beat guys so he can avoid blocks and he got that tackle for loss, which is what we saw. And Kevin wants to know, do you think EB going so much to the pass was more a schematic thing, or do you think he's trying to give Sam as many reps as he can to get him more comfortable with the starter role? I think this is what EB wants.
Well, I think this will, in this particular case, this will go back to, I had heard Gibson was going to end up playing a lot more than he did, because I think they were going to throw the ball a ton, and he's the guy that they're trying to utilize as a J.D. McKissick type role for them, or however you want to kind of define it. He was out there to be a receiver for them and carry the ball. It feels like that changed after that fumble, but this was not a preseason game. They went out there and this was their game plan, and that schematically they were going to throw the ball a lot early.
Yeah. And so Marcus says Chase Young had an ACL and patellar tendon at the same time. I never heard that. Was reporting that all last year and talked about it on here too. So I'm sorry you didn't hear it, but that was out there, and it has been out there. But it was, I'll say this, like, sometimes with these injuries too, people have to know, like, agents a lot of times will tell teams, I don't want you saying this or this or this. And we've seen that in other cases here, maybe even just in the last couple of years. Okay. And in this case, but I know in this case, the patellar tendon, it kind of came out after the fact, after the initial injury.
Yeah.
It was a few months later, but I know I reported a lot last year. I know others did as well. And I talked about it. But it was bad. It was bad. And so what a couple more here. Tackling overall felt really solid for week 1. I agree. I think it's been like that since the preseason. I think they had a better camp in that regard. So, I think that's been a good thing. Bram, what are you looking forward most to seeing on Sunday? Is there one area you say they've got to be better here if they want to build on this?
I don't want to really say anything about the Broncos yet because I haven't seen them play.
Right,
so I really want to take some time later in the week. And for this team, I do feel like I'd like to see Cody Barton, I would hope in a short period of time, play a little better. I mean, play a little better is not the right word. I don't even know how to put this. He was the one that concerned me really after the game. And I'd like to talk to the coaches about it before I really say anything else about it. But he was the one that felt a little out of position at times. Stopping the run on the edge was a problem in the preseason. They had a couple early problems here. It didn't come back to bite them because that was not a team that was capable of very many explosive plays, but that remains something that I would keep an eye on. And then offensively, I really think it's more like to sit there and go like, well, the offensive line is going to be dominant. I really don't think that's ever really going to happen.
I don't think
they need to be adequate. So
right.
I saw, and I didn't not expect this because it was the first week in a real game, and there's a lot of new pieces here. There were some miscommunications. If I'm Denver and watched, where the Cardinals had some big time success and made some big time game changing type plays, they confused them by putting 6 up on the line, and they only had to bring 4 out of it. But the Washington offensive line was confused at who had who, and it ended up being a couple of very big moments in the game. And the other thing I would just say, like, I actually thought Sam played really well. I thought, I'll give him a B or maybe a B- because he had a couple of, the fumble's terrible. Like that could have lost them the game. But overall, I liked his feel for the game. I like the way he bounces back. I would hope that, in a couple of occasions that he gets rid of the ball a little bit faster. But you can probably say that about any quarterback in literally any game. Josh Allen last night, if you watched him, was ridiculous how loose he was with the ball. And
he was getting rid of the ball. There was no doubt about that. But that's the thing with Howell, that some of these things, it's a new offense and it's his second start. There's a lot going on for him that's going to take time. And like, I know we talk about this, and everybody wants to see a high level of play right away. So but I think the key for him is just keep building on him and don't let, just keep building. That's it. Yeah. And, because each week you're going to see something different too. It's not like, okay, this week you were slow with the ball. Now next week you're not. You're going to see a different defense. So now you're going to have to read it a certain way. I think the key is like learning a few things. For example, the ball security, or on some of those RPOs. If you see this and you cannot hesitate, you've got to let it go and stay with your throw a little bit longer. Because if he had Jacoby Brown for 6, it was wide open. So like little things like that's going to take time, and you have to keep in mind that it takes time. With the line, there are new stars at 4 spots. It also takes time.
Yeah,
the question is, can they get to a good enough level as a group to make this a good offense? That part where they have to.
If there are 2 things, it's funny, like this is year 4. If there are 2 things that have come to fruition each and every year, the line starts slow, and then suddenly they kind of find their way in the middle of the season, and the run fits are bad, and they find their way by the middle of the season.
Right.
What I'm hoping is that this team gets off to a better start and gets away with some wins here early. Because if they go out to Denver, I hated that they lost the Raiders, by the way, because just the rhythms of the league. 0-2 at home is
their offense didn't look good, Bram.
No, I haven't seen it yet, but like, I'm just telling you, like, how this goes. Like,
I know how it goes. Yeah.
Trust me, as much as we're looking at this schedule going, we might be 2-0 in Buffalo. You don't think they weren't looking at that schedule going, Raiders, Commanders at home to start the season? We're 2-0. Like, you don't think they were thinking that?
No, of course.
That loss, the fact that they lost that game bothered me, because it's just the rhythms of the league. They're going to be hearing it all week, how they have to win this game. So we'll see how it goes. But overall, that team is, no matter what, is going to be missing a lot of their weaponry. So again, I think they're facing a much higher level quarterback, no matter what you feel about Russ. And I'll have to watch to see what it looked like.
Right. I have to still watch it too.
But like, they are missing a lot of their weapons. Like, I don't know if Jerry Jeudy's going to play. Tim Patrick got hurt. One of their tight ends got hurt. Like, they've had a lot of injuries here early. Jerry Jeudy, if he does play, will not be 100%. He's coming off a bad hamstring injury. So it is set up for their defense again to have a good performance. And, just based off what I know of the way Denver played, boy, I'm going to be excited if we're coming back home to play Buffalo and this team hasn't given up 1 offensive touchdown in 2 weeks. Like, that's a possibility.
Yeah. By the way, and we'll close on this because we can go to NFC. Ant-Man, we need someone to play like Micah Parsons. I mean, like, okay, we need someone to play like a possible defensive player of the year. Yes, they do. Everybody needs that. Everybody. Now, I will say
he might be the best defensive player in the NFL.
He's a lot of fun to watch, man. If you like, because he can move, he's smart. He can play a lot of places. And he says maybe Cox. No. Jabril Cox is not Micah Parsons. Jabril Cox was in Dallas. Keep in mind, and they were okay letting him go. He's got some work to do, but I do think he can fill a role here because I know they like him. So let's see where he goes in the future. But let's not start thinking that he can be Micah Parsons at this point. But everybody needs him. Dallas with a dominant opening win, and it is funny. And we're going to wrap it up right here. But I will say, like in the NFC East, it's going to be very interesting because Dallas and Philly, Dallas looked really good. Philly, I didn't watch that game, but I know Mac Jones looked like he had pretty good numbers. And then these guys have to they have to play better, but you'd rather say that after a win than after a loss. So
yeah,
big week for them. Can they build on the momentum? Bram, thanks a lot for joining me. Thank you, everybody, for all the good questions. And I appreciate you tuning in. Always appreciate listening. Again, I have a film review on the sacks and Sam Howell up now. I'll be back on Thursday talking to Jeff Legwald, my ESPN counterpart, previewing the Broncos. So I'll talk to you next time.